fifth day of
October. The time is 6:32 p.m. Roll call.
Ann Torrey,
Here.
Raymond Mast, Eileen Hogan, here, Ben Euro.
Here.
Sharon Lee.
Here.
Vincent Light,
Here.
Paul Cagnon,
Here.
Anna Cruz,
Here.
Amanda Doremus, Eugene Horowitz,
Here.
Chris Havens.
Okay, adequate notice of this meeting has been posted at Borough Hall, filed with the Borough Clerk and mailed to the Asbury Park Press, the Two River Times and the Star Letter. This meeting is being tape recorded, and since the applicant uses the services of a court reporter to transcribe tapes, the board requires a copy of the transcript. We will break at about 8 p.m. for deliberation of testimony heard thus far in the conference room on the first floor. The public is invited to attend. However, discussion between board members and the public is not permitted at that time. No new cases will be heard after 9 p.m. The Red Bank Zoning Board of Adjustment has maintained a policy cutoff hour of 9:30 p.m. for its hearings. Any applicants not heard this evening will be carried over to the next scheduled meeting. Salute, Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
We do not have any administrative matters. We do have meeting minutes from September 7th. Would somebody move their acceptance?
Anna,
And a second?
thank you.
Sorry, I had a couple of corrections,
Okay.
if now's the right time. On page 2, the first vote that was taken, it lists my name, but I wasn't voting on that one. And the flip side of that, and Eileen, you might have noticed it before, but on the last vote, it lists your name. But
Right, and I wasn't,
Yeah.
it said,
So I think the confusion was, I voted on the second one because Eileen was.
oh, yeah, okay,
Yeah,
okay, that's.
so I got promoted from the alternate.
Immediately demoted then.
I'm used to it. Couple of typos also, but maybe Eileen, I'll just give those to you.
Okay.
Go through here. Okay, thank you.
Do we do a voice vote on minutes or a roll call?
You can do yes, no, do
A
Do a roll call.
Okay, please.
Eileen Hogan,
Yes.
Ben Euro.
Yeah.
Sharon Lee,
Yes.
Vincent Light,
Yes.
Paul Cagnon,
Yes.
Anna Cruz,
Yes.
and Eugene Horowitz.
Yes.
We have actually 3 resolutions tonight. Do you want to do the new one first? Sure. It's simple.
that was a resolution for 15 Tilton Avenue, and it was a subdivision application. It's been on the record books for about a year for pending, and the applicant's attorney indicated that they're going to withdraw the application. So this is just a resolution dismissing the application without prejudice, and it just basically takes it, and we can now take it off of Shauna's desk, and we can return any escrow that's left over, and it's just sort of administratively just to put an end to that file.
So we need a motion to approve that resolution.
Please.
Motion to approve and
Oh, second.
Sharon and, I'm sorry, Vincent.
And a roll call on that, I guess. Yep.
Ann Torrey.
Yes.
Eileen Hogan,
Yes,
Ben Euro. Sharon Lee,
Yes.
Vincent Light,
Yes.
Paul Cagnon,
Yes.
and Anna Cruz.
The next resolution would be number 1 on the agenda. That is for 30 St. Nicholas Place.
And Shauna, that resolution has been distributed. There are no, it was for single family use, and I don't think there are any conditions of note.
No, there wasn't.
Can we have a motion to approve that one?
I'll make a motion.
Eileen, and a second from We've got Anna.
Anna?
Sorry.
Eileen Hogan,
Okay, sorry.
Yes.
oh, never mind. Okay, it's good. It's in song. Eileen Hogan,
Yes.
Ben Euro.
Yeah.
Sharon Lee,
Yes.
Vincent Light,
Yes.
Paul Cagnon,
Yes.
Anna Cruz, and Eugene Horowitz.
Yes.
And then the resolution number 2 for 273 Shrewsbury Avenue.
Sure, Madam Chair, that was a fairly intense resolution. It's been distributed to the board. This was for the Thrive RB LLC application, and it was for the demolition of the existing structure on the site, construction of a 3-story neurodiverse supportive housing building, and installation of various site improvements, including on-site parking, landscaping, lighting, utilities, and a stormwater management system. This application, number of conditions in there. I won't recite them at length, but there were a couple, and I think we talked about some clarifications. And we're obviously the the approval is conditioned upon the applicant obtaining any and all outside approvals that are necessary. And if it's not in here, we're going to insert language that says, to the extent the application materially changes as a result of any of those outside approvals, the applicant's required to return to the board. And we're also going to have a provision. There were a couple of 2 or 3 specific conditions in there where the applicants were going to be applying to the county for, Sean, it was a 15-minute loading zone space and to lengthen the get the loading space, get the loading space in the front. And I think we wanted to say that if those approvals are not obtained, the applicant is required to come back to this board.
Correct.
And then there were some other, and if we wanted to, we would adopt it subject to engineering review. There were just a couple of technical things that I need either Shauna or our engineer to confirm. And I think that was it.
All right,
With all those caveats, can we get a motion to approve this resolution tonight? Okay, so Ben, and a second from Anna.
Ben Euro.
Yeah.
Sharon Lee,
Yes.
Vincent Light,
Yes.
Paul Cagnon.
I think technically
Oh,
Paul can't vote.
Yeah.
Anna Cruz. And Eugene Horowitz.
Yes.
Okay, on to new business. We have 2 applicants tonight.
Tonight, first one is 1 Berry Street. So come on up.
Okay, good evening. As the applicant's team comes forward, let's do a couple of preliminary procedural things to get the ball rolling. First up, is there anyone here who had any questions or comments or concerns about the sufficiency of the notice they received? All right, we don't see any. I'm gonna let the record reflect that the borough's Director of Planning and Zoning and myself, we reviewed the notice and found everything to be in order. So it'd be my humble opinion that we have jurisdiction to proceed tonight. And speaking of the borough's Director of Community Development, that's Shauna Ebanks, let's swear Shauna in. Shauna, do you swear that the information and testimony you're about to provide, to the extent you provide any, will be the truth to the best of your knowledge, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you. And we as a board will mark into the record what we have before us. So A1 is the application package, and A2 is the intent to proceed dated June 29th, 2023. A3 is a survey prepared by David J. von Steenberg, and that was dated December 29th, 2022. A4 is the plans, and that's prepared by Edward O'Neill, registered architect, consisting of 3 sheets and dated June 1st, 2023. And A5 is the review memorandum from Shauna Ebanks, and that's dated October 3rd, 2023. And I think that is This is Kevin Asadi. He's the applicant's attorney. And good evening, Mr. Asadi.
Evening, is the mic picking me up?
You gotta put it closer to you.
Bring it closer, how's that? Sounds bad.
Little more.
Right into. Up right into it. I thought maybe we could share one, but that might not be too easy. Thank you. Good evening, Kevin Asadi, Zager Hughes. It's nice to be here again, and it's nice to meet some people for the very first time. We are here to present an application for a new home on a vacant lot located at 1 Berry Street here in town. The reason we need variance relief is that the lot is undersized. And so because of the size of the lot, it's, we'll hear from our architect about this, it's impossible to comply with the setbacks. And if we were to comply with all the setbacks, they all overlap and there would be no left. So we're here to present a humble new construction to go on this lot. And I also understand that there is an adjacent neighbor here this evening who expressed interest to me in purchasing the lot. And when she has the opportunity to give comment, perhaps Mr. Kennedy will explain to her how that process went. But for now, we'd like to proceed with our application. So unless the board has any questions at this time, I'd like to have my first witness sworn.
Sure. If you could state your name and address, please.
Jacob Morales, myself with that.
Morales.
Correct.
All right. If you could just raise your right hand. Do you swear that the information and testimony you're about to provide will be the truth, to the best of your knowledge, to help you God?
Yes.
And just if Kevin, if I could just ask 2 quick questions. Are you the owner of the subject property? And how long have you owned it, roughly? Okay, and it's,
So was the question about the subject property or where he resided?
oh no, how long have you owned this subject property?
Oh, for a year.
1 year? Less than a year, got it. Okay, and it's a vacant lot, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, a little background information before I ask Mr. Morales a couple of questions. My law firm actually represented Mr. Morales when he acquired the lot. The property went under contract it was listed on the MLS in December of 2022. It went under contract in late December of 2022, and it closed in March of 2023. Now, between contract to close, as you probably know, buyers do a title search. During that investigation, we saw many problems with the property. There was a substantial property tax lien on the property, as well as a break in the chain of title that went back multiple decades. Because of those things,
And I'm sorry, did your client buy it as vacant land?
bought it as vacant.
Thank you.
Yes. Because of those issues, the seller was unable to sell the property. But we ended up working out an arrangement, and you'll see in a moment, the purchase price ended up being $20,000. That was because we purchased the property with unmarketable title and subject to a heavy property tax lien, which had to be, all of which had to be resolved. Since that time, we resolved the tax lien. The town has been paid its taxes and continues to be paid its taxes on the property. And we had to file a quiet title lawsuit against the previous owners in title so that we can fix the broken chain of title, and we prevailed on that as well. So we've essentially been able to take this lot, and with a lot of effort and skill, we've been able to put it in a state where it could be utilized as a buildable lot for the town. So that's the background. I thought it was important for you all to know that, and I will now ask a few questions of Mr. Morales. So you've already answered that you're the owner of the property, correct? Correct. And you already answered that you reside in Red Bank? Correct. And how long have you resided in Red Bank?
Few years now. It's an amazing town. I didn't realize they were amazing towns like this. I'm originally from Jersey City. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with Jersey City right now as we speak. Everything is so much faster. It's too much violence and everything. And I don't want to raise my family in there. I come to Red Bank and I'm like, there's a town like this here? So I've never come past South Jersey, so this is the first time I'm over here. I'm happy. I want to start my foundation here. Like I want to raise my family, my kids. I talk to the cops and they're very, very nice to me. It's weird. It's just a transition from Jersey City. And I just love being here. Can't wait to like explore more and just build my foundation here. Everything, honestly. I love the school, everything. I love the town.
What are your intentions with the proposed home? If you were to have it built, if you were to be approved this evening, what would you do with the house?
So my mom doesn't know, but I spoke to Sean about this. But it's gonna be a surprise for her because she thinks all she knows is Jersey City. And I said, Mom, you don't understand. If you go to Red Bank, so much more quiet. The town is so you could leave your doors open, nothing to worry about. You could raise your kid, everything here, literally everything here. And she doesn't know, but if everything goes well, God willing, I know with God first, everything is possible. I can have the house for her. She has no idea that I'm doing all this process. She just thinks that I live in Red Bank and then that's it. But I told her, Mom, just be patient and maybe one day you get to experience it too. And hopefully I could grant this as a birthday gift for her.
When you were looking for property to make that a reality, how did you learn of this property being available?
So I was told by Stacy, a realtor. I don't know if you guys are familiar with her, but she's a realtor and she's the one that put me onto the land. And we went through her and right away it was like, as long as my mom is comfortable and it's something that she could be comfortable in, I would love to purchase it.
And the property was listed on the multiple listing service and the realtors were able to find it?
Yeah.
Okay, and that's how your realtor found it? And I don't have any further questions.
Any questions from the board?
I have a question just about when you were saying the title and all, was this always just the size lot, like it wasn't subdivided from something, you know,
Yeah,
it goes back, you said decades
it
and
goes back a long
decades?
time. There was, my understanding is that a long time ago, a house did exist on the lot and at some point in time, it had been torn down. It had been existing as a vacant lot for as far back as your tax records that I've seen would indicate. But like I said, for all that time, not only was there a break in the chain of title and a clear title as to who actually owned it, but nobody was paying property taxes. And so, you know, this property was just really just a hole in your tax map. And so we're trying to change that.
Okay. And you're building you would build a modest house, fit on the property, for your mother, right?
Yes.
Yes, you're like trying to win us over, it's not fair. You know?
No. And I even told Shonda since day one, God willing, everything is gonna work out. And I couldn't believe when I came to live in Red Bank myself, how beautiful and how calm it is, just calm. And that's the way I like to live my life. And the school around here is amazing. The cops around here are amazing. And I was like, okay, I don't have to go to Florida or anything no more. I honestly live in Jersey, stay here in Jersey. So I'm happy I found Red Bank, honestly.
Any other questions from board members?
Not too early to ask for
Mr.
plans.
Morales, or are we gonna hear about
See,
the
what is it you want
building?
to build? I mean, what's this?
Ms. Lee, we do intend to call Mr. O'Neill, who's our
I'm gonna wait
architect,
for that, okay.
and he'll give you all the details about the construction. It won't be as lovey-dovey.
As a mother, I wanna know where your son thinks he's with his mother.
Okay.
Any questions from members of the public for Mr. Morales before we go on to the next witness? Okay,
Okay.
next.
Mr. O'Neill.
All right, good evening. If you could just state your name and business address, please.
Edward W. O'Neill, 65
I don't think the mic, just put it even a little closer.
65 Monmouth Street, right there.
All right, and you're testifying tonight in your capacity as?
The architect and planner.
Okay, and welcome to the Red Bank Zoning Board. If you could just raise your right hand. Do you swear that the information and testimony you're about to provide will be the truth, the best of your knowledge, to help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
O'Neill, would you enlighten the board as to your experience, education, and training?
Certainly, I'm licensed as both an architect and planner in New Jersey. I've been licensed as an architect since 1988. I have a degree in architecture from the New York Institute of Technology, a master's degree in architecture from the University of Pennsylvania, a master's degree in planning from the University of Pennsylvania. I'm the head of the architecture program for Brookdale Community College and have been for the last 34 years. I'm a full professor there.
Most of us know you, but now everybody knows you, so thank you, Mr. O'Neill. It's okay. But now we know more about it.
And I am
I assume he's accepted as an
Yeah,
expert
yeah.
in both fields, right? Thank you. Oh, while we're doing that, can we mark the, an exhibit that I referred to in the round, that is, A6. And it's simply a printout from Zillow that shows the property history.
Okay, so mark that as A6. Then Shauna is. So Kevin, what is A7? Or I guess Ed, what is A7?
the drawings you have are reduced versions of the 3 boards, which are the drawings that were submitted, but there's 2 additional sheets, which would be A300 and C300.
All right, so just speak closer to the mic and what we're gonna say. So A7 is essentially the same documents that were previously submitted, but the front page is illustrated.
All of them, actually the first 3 pages.
Okay, illustrated. And then, same as previously submitted. Thank you, architectural plans,
C301 or new.
C300 and C301 new, got it.
Susan, see where you're designing.
Sure, let me describe the project again. The proposal is to construct a single-family residence. It's 2 floors with a potentially finished attic. It's on an undersized 2 stories. And a potentially finished attic. We show the attic is finished. The client told me they will not finish it. An undersized lot consists of 1,666 square feet, where 4,500 square feet is required. It's in a R2 zone. This is an allowed use. The proposed house meets the minimum house size requirement, which is 1,250 square feet with 700 square feet on the first floor. The house we propose is 1,675 square feet. That includes the finished attic. With 718 square feet on the first floor, which is conforming. It's fairly close, but that's what we could do on the lot. The lot is currently vacant. There was, according to what I saw in the county documentation, there was a house on the lot as late as 1998. It was part of it, taxed as a house and lot in 1998. When it was reassessed in the early 2000s, that house was gone. If you do go to the site, you can sort of see where there's a little bit of a depression in the rectangle. Not very deep, but it looks like something settled a little bit to give an indication of where that house footprint was. The house as described what you have is the same as the it's 2 stories with again an optional finished attic. There are 3 bedrooms. We have baths, 2 on the second, a half bath on the first. There's a basement. It's 2.5 stories and 27 feet tall, which is less than the 35 feet permitted. If we now start talking a little more about zone, well, the first floor has the typical living room, dining room, kitchen, laundry room facility. From a zoning standpoint, if you look at the context, this is a single-family residential zone that has been rezoned over time to permit larger non-residential developments. Even though the neighborhood, the majority of the properties in the neighborhood remain single-family. The building across Berry Street is a very large building. It is a self-storage building, which came out consolidation of 4 smaller lots. The self-storage building has a largely blank facade on Berry Street. There aren't any windows or fenestration that way. It's between 3 and 4 stories tall. It has its own parking lot off of Temple Avenue, which are the parking spaces that were required for that building size. So it doesn't utilize any on-street parking. If you look at sheet A301, there's an aerial view of the street. There's a red square that shows where our site is. The big white square on the left side is the self-storage building. If you do a quick survey of the properties around it, there are 7 single-family houses in the immediate vicinity of the subject property. 5 of those lots are undersized. They range from 2,173 square feet to 3,407 square feet. And they're bigger. 97, excuse me, square feet. So they are larger than our lot. They are significantly smaller than 4,500 square foot lot requirement. And I think if you start to look around in the aerial map, the houses around it, they're all smaller too. Berry Street has only one building facing it. So there's only one property that has a Berry Street address. That's the neighbor to the immediate west. All the other properties do not face Berry Street. The corner properties face south of Central Avenue. You would be the second address and the last address on Berry Street because there are no other vacant properties. There is on-street parking available on both sides of Berry Street. My estimate from field work is about 26 spaces. But again, nobody really utilizes those spaces because there's one other house on, and the one house that is on Berry Street has its own parking. The property to the west has setbacks that are less than those for rear. So the east side, front, and rear portions of the building are closer to the property line than what we're proposing. So the proposal we're making would be kind of in concert with the one house that is on Berry Street. And the side setbacks of 10 feet, most of the houses in the area don't have setbacks like that. Now, if we go to the municipal land use law rationales for giving a variance, I'll kind of address each one and then give testimony to the. If we go to 40:55D-70C1A, by reason of exceptional narrowness, shallowness, or shape of a specific piece of property, a variance is justified. The existing undersized lot did have a house on it at one time. There is really no ability to enlarge the property because enlarging the property would create variances on the other property. And even if you combine them, they're still going to be undersized. It's an allowed use, and the neighborhood is completely developed. This is the only vacant lot. Now, in section 55-70C16, by reason of an extraordinary and exceptional situation uniquely affecting a specific piece of property, the strict application of any regulation pursuant to Article 8 of the Act would result in a peculiar and exceptional practical difficulty to, or exceptional or undue hardship upon the developer of the property. So if you look back at sheet C301, there's a diagram. The diagram to the right is a schematic of the site. And if you look at the red lines are the setback lines. So the lot is 50 feet deep, and it has a 25-foot front yard setback and a 25-foot rear yard setback. So the lines touch. That means there is no developable property in the footprint. Now, in planning jargon, that is usually referred to as a taking. A taking meaning that because of the zoning regulations, this lot is undevelopable, but somebody owns the lot, so you're really kind of eliminating their right to develop it in any manner. And so that is a hardship. The proposed house also doesn't meet the height limitations, it does meet the minimum size requirements of the ordinance. So if we set the house back further than what we're proposing, the house falls under the minimum size and requires another variance. So we have adjusted the site plan to have setbacks that still make the house in compliance, but they're as big as they can be without causing another variance. And the house is not, it's not a large house. It's not a large structure.
What's the size of the house?
It's 1,675, including the finished attic.
Does that include the basement too? Or does that not count?
Does not count the district.
Mr. Simpson, Mr. O'Neill,
Yeah,
you said that the attic was not intended to be finished right away, but it would be optional, is that correct?
that's correct.
What is the square footage of the what will be unfinished in the attic, do you know that?
Give me a second. It's 209 square feet. It's basically one room.
So is it correct to say that, for the immediate proposal is for really a 1,400 square foot, structure?
Yes, that's right. But what we did to make the basement or the attic, I'm sorry, renovatable, is we continued the regular staircase up to the, so it doesn't have a pull down attic stair, it has a really good stair.
And besides that feature, making the attic, let's say, suitable for finishing, does that also provide a safer place to store belongings, rather than those pull down stairs? Or do you consider those interior permanent stairs a safer option to get up to that attic space, even if it's just for storage?
Yes, absolutely. And that was the motivation initially for creating the stair to go up. My suggestion to Jake was, well, you could also finish this many square feet of it in the future if you wanted to. And that's probably going to be up to his money.
Would there be any bedrooms in the attic under any circumstances?
No. No, that's not the intention. There's no bathroom room. It's just it's one room, 200 square feet, which is a decent sized bedroom.
But there is,
Headroom, it's not totally under the eaves, you've got enough headroom.
Yes, this is the way the ordinance, if you look at it, is the amount of bedroom that determines the square footage. And that's what you want. Other issues, if the maximum lot coverage regulation is met, the proposed development would not meet the minimum house size requirement, and therefore there would be a need for another variance. So it's 35% maximum, we're at 48%. So again, that causes another variance, but you can't really correct that variance without putting another variance. We have not put a garage in the house because putting a garage under the house would raise the height of the house such that unless the roof was really, really shallow, we would probably violate the height regulation. And also, there's a concern that Jacob's mother is not necessarily getting any younger, so living completely on the second floor is not really what you really want to do with somebody that bracket, because if you put a 2-car garage under this, 2-car garage is going to be about 576 square feet. The first floor is 718 square feet. So there is no first floor, there's a staircase. And they would be living a floor above, and they don't want to live a floor above. I can understand that because they want to live, close to the ground. They can walk out front, they can walk around easily, they can get down the house, they can enjoy the yard. It's not a big yard, but they can still enjoy the yard just coming right off of the kitchen. I mean, all those different things are reasons why we did not put a garage up in that.
So there is no garage.
There is no garage.
and there is no on-site.
Site parking,
No, there's no room.
so you would need a variance.
Yes, we definitely see the variance for the plan. Also, if we were to put the garage under the house, it would be the only house in the neighborhood like that. So it would stick out like a sore thumb. And given that it's a relatively small footprint, although the houses around it are not very big, they're not much bigger. By raising it up, it's just gonna look really odd.
You have all the bedrooms on the second floor though, right? The bedrooms are on the second floor.
Yeah, but if we put the garage under the first floor would be raised to the second floor, and that'd be on the third level. So. And the last regarding this is 40:55D-62. It just says that the zoning ordinance shall be drawn with reasonable consideration of the character of each district and its peculiar suitability for particular uses and to encourage the most appropriate use of land. And I think that based on those criteria, we meet the height regulations, we meet the house size regulations, the lot size, again, we can't really do anything about. And we think architecturally it blends in the other houses that are in the neighborhood, except for the fact it doesn't have a garage. And some of those houses don't have garages because they're in the back, so we basically proceed with this house without a garage. In discussing the positive criteria and the negative criteria of the municipal land use law, which is 40:55D2. One of those criteria, selected criteria that we think we meet, is to encourage municipal action to guide the appropriate use of development of all lands in the state in a manner that will promote the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare. Well, this is an infill house. Therefore, it's strengthening the neighborhood that exists. So there is a tremendous housing need in the state and national. And this house is a modest house. They're not trying to maximize as far as real estate potential. And I think that adding residents to the neighborhood, because Berry Street only has one house on it, will do nothing more than increase the residential presence on Berry Street. Section E, promote appropriate population densities and concentrations that will contribute to the well-being of persons, neighborhoods, communities, and regions, and preservation of the environment. Again, it's infill, we're not using or extending infrastructure to create the house. The infrastructure is there. The goals of the state master plan is to maximize the use of existing infrastructure. Again, single-family housing, predominantly single-family neighborhood. And the lot size is small. Most of the lot sizes are smaller than the requirement. There are also G and I, which talk about desirable visual environment. And again, I think by having the garage not under it, we create that environment and sufficient space for residential uses and open space, both public and private, according to environmental requirements. It's for citizens. Again, because the house is relatively affordable, it does have a housing problem that exists in the state.
If I may say for the record,
No, you have to, if you are gonna speak, you have to speak into the microphone.
for the record, like when I came to the town and I mentioned Berry Street, the town didn't even know Berry Street existed until I came. There's like Berry Street, you sure it's in Red Bank? 9 10 I'm like, no, it's in Red Bank. Okay, let's do our research. So hopefully I can build something there and then make Berry Street the actual street that you guys can be proud of.
I have to say, I had the same thing when you first came to me. Berry Street? The negative criteria, so no variance or other relief may be granted under the terms of this section unless such variance or other relief can be granted without substantial detriment to public good and will not substantially impair the intent and purpose of the zone plan and the zone change. So we've talked about that quite a bit, but I also wanted to address the new 2020 master plan. And there are a couple of different things in the master plan, the goals and objectives section that I think we help in. One is.
I'm sorry, that was 2023.
It's the new one is to embrace a smart growth mentality with targeting infill development minimizes unwanted negative impacts. So again, this is infill development. The scale and configuration will be similar to the other houses. The property is small, but again, comparable to a majority of adjoining sites. It's similar to smaller height, it has similar to smaller square footage. It's similar if larger setbacks. And it's really taking advantage of underutilized parking, on-street parking.
You saying, what you say about parking?
Underutilized because.
Underutilized.
There's nobody parking on Berry Street because there's no reason for that. Preserve and create affordable housing options across this spectrum, ages and family types with a comparable level of quality, amenities and market rate options. So again, we talked about the outside, it is 3 bedrooms, 2.5 bathrooms, it has a full basement. It is very compact which actually brings the cost down. There's through ventilation in each room for energy savings appliances, new insulation, new appliances, which will all meet the new energy code. The last is strengthening existing neighborhoods to enhance safety and communication, as we discussed. Putting another property on Berry Street that addresses Berry Street law and development. Safety, tell you is eyes on the street. Eyes on the street creates safety. Right now, there's one eye on the street, so this will create more, and we think it will help the area tremendously. It's also, again, another planning jargon is by infilling the lot, you have the teeth and smile. Smile with the missing tooth. This is the missing tooth. Put the tooth back in, the smile. I think that's my testimony. Just on C300 are just some shots of Berry Street. So if you're unfamiliar with it, it's Berry Street showing different times of day, the cars that are parked, the cars that are not parked there.
Rodeo, can I direct your attention to the brief from the points in the planning review memo? Where there was some requested testimony. Could you provide some specific responses to those which you haven't already touched?
Point number 5 was providing lighting for the proposed house. There'll be required lighting at the doors, the front door and the back door. And that's really the lighting that's proposed. So for safety reasons of coming out of the house, you need that lighting. The lighting in the front will actually be in the ceiling of the recessed entry cell. The second is regarding landscaping for the site. There's not a lot of landscaping. I would say there will definitely be landscaping in the front and back of the site. The sides minimally, because again, it's 5.5 feet. I would say that there probably won't be much landscaping there. Condensers will be in the rear yard and screened, used with landscaping. Utility connections will be, like my presumption is that we'll reconnect the connections that were there with the houses there.
Excuse me, can I ask you just a quick question?
Sorry.
Now, are you sure there was a house there in 98 or was it like a garage?
According to the tax records of the county, it was a house.
If someone was living there as a residence?
Yes, it was being taxed as a single family residence.
Because it seems like the property next door, or directly to the left of it is a driveway.
If you're looking at it to the left, and east, it's a driveway, but that house faces South Pearl.
Yep.
But it's driveway, because it's such a narrow lot, its driveway is up there.
Right, and then right across from the proposed house is also a 2-car driveway.
Yes, it's the exact same situation. The house is on South Pearl and the driveway is on Berry. Because again, it's a narrow lot. They're actually less than 50 feet wide.
Yeah. And I'm just looking at Google Maps. There are some utility lines that will go that right now are running right through where the house would be.
Yes.
So how does that work?
Well, we'll have to probably disconnect, reconnect with whether it's another utility or like that. That's something that I think we negotiated with Jason. The comment on grading plan, we can certainly do a grading plan as condition of approval. Same with, I see no draining issues on the site, the site issues back to the street. Again, address that with the grading plan. Requirement of one shade tree or a payment in lieu, and I'll discuss that with Mr. Morales in my decision.
Just a testimony about fencing.
I would have to ask Mr. Morales, he has not given me any indication of installing a fence.
So there's no proposed fencing right now?
Again, I would just say, Mr. Light, that would be based upon using foliage to screen the condensing unit as opposed to a fence. But my understanding of the moment, we covered that with shortly. There won't be, no.
I'm sorry, I missed the location of the condensing units
Be in the rear.
in the rear. Okay, great.
How will that affect the setback? Then
The condensing units will be closer to the property line in the rear, correct?
Yeah.
So that'll be,
I don't know how big they are.
Condensing unit's about 30 inches square.
okay.
A little less than 3 feet tall.
Okay. Okay.
So my guess would be that you could really two, only because the most efficient way to the cooling system is to have 2 units to make such a small house. With one in the attic, one in the basement, that way it's 2 zones, which is more energy efficient. Miniaturization is really the best one.
And in the ordinance, it requires it to be 3 feet from the property line, so you'll have enough space to do that.
Yes, we have the full zone. Thank you, yes.
And in the front of the house, right now, there's a proposed 6-foot setback.
Yeah.
How wide are the stairs? So what is the setback? So there's another 3 feet and then 3 feet of stairs.
Yeah.
And the house next door, do you know how far back the front setback is there?
If I scale off of the survey, it's about 2.5 feet.
So it's very similar to what you have
Yeah, it
proposed
almost
here.
lines up.
Yeah.
We use that in certain building code issues. 5 feet is the magic number for the wall to be fire rated. So by making it 5.5 feet, we want the fire rated wall. So that was that choice. And then the setback was really based on the neighbor next door, because we were trying to get the 10 feet back and trying to build a house that had 700 square foot.
Other questions from the board? For Mr.
Mr. O'Neill?
Sorry, another question.
Yes.
It looks like there are some fences listed on C001, including one that might be in the back on the right.
That's an encroachment from a neighboring property.
Existing from a neighbor.
Yeah, so they exist.
Thank you.
Anything else from the board before we go to the public? Questions? Okay, anyone from the public have a question for Mr. O'Neill? This is question time, not opinion time. We'll have that later, but this is questions for Mr. O'Neill.
Yes,
No, you need to come up and be sworn and all that.
Hi, good evening. Will you just state your name and address?
Mark Allen.
Mark? And I'm sorry, what's your last name?
Mark Allen.
Allen?
Right.
And your address?
54 Dr. James Park Boulevard.
Okay, good evening and welcome. Do you swear that the information and testimony you're about to provide, to the extent you provide any, will be the truth, to the best of your knowledge, so help you God? Thank you.
So my question for, State Boulevard, and plus, here, property in question, and just to kind of give different information from what's given is, the times I drive down Berry Street, there's always cars out there. I don't think I've ever been down there, there's not cars. I did pull up a Google map and there's 7 cars and a trailer on the street, so, I'm not sure, I can see the diagram, the pictures, there's always, cars and animals. There is another testimony was given. I wasn't sure about which location. There is an empty lot that's catty corner to the lot in question at Glenberry. I thought on the south of the street, there is an empty lot. That's number, the zoning map is 2.02. Empty. And to clarify, there was a house on this empty lot until probably the date in question in 1989, something like that. It had someone who lived there, I believe, had passed away, and the house was vacant for a number of years, started collapsing, falling on itself, and built out of it. So that is accurate, it's stated. I would suggest that the board take its drive down the street and like how small this lot is. I'm guessing it'd be about smaller than this room. For the lot. That's just off the top of my head, guess. And then look at the proposed house size that's going to go on this and see how a house in this size with such a small lot might impact the community. Now, with that said, is I haven't seen the plans of what the house is going to look like. So I don't, I kind of imagine in my head how big this house would be on the lot. And I do have a fence. I mentioned the fence. I do have a fence. And there is a fence on my abutting our properties. Basically, I kind of put a fence where an existing fence was years ago. So if there was any sort of code violation, but if didn't meet any easements, whatever. I just basically just work an old wire rail fence and put it exactly where it was. So
Can I ask you a question? Is this yours right here? See, like, it looks like it goes down. That one's yours.
That's this one area right here.
You indicated that this is your lot that abuts to the rear. Then is this your fence that kind of bends down to Berry Street?
No,
That's not you.
no, I face.
You're up here.
Yeah.
Berry is right here.
Yes, I made this line. Yes.
And this is your backyard fence.
Correct.
Yeah. And this fence connects, but does that belong to you as well? So your fence is completely on your own property, so you have no issue with your fence whatsoever.
Yeah, not at all, but I just, there's a conversation about a fence and there is a fence between our lots.
Yeah, but yours is located directly based on our survey. Yeah.
And you know what, Madam Chair, if I may, just to keep the record straight, there's going to be a time for you to make comments. Do you have any questions for Mr. O'Neill or Mr. Morales?
No, I guess one question is how much area for grass would be on the lot after the.
It'll be 52% of the lot.
How much?
52?
48% covered, so 52 is. That's that. So a little over 800 square feet.
Okay, that's all much about it. Thank you.
Anybody else from, yes, come on up.
Jackson.
I'm sorry, your name is?
Rosemary Jackson.
And is Rosemary one word? Hyphenated, okay. And your address? All right, good evening and welcome to the Red Bank Zoning Board. Do you swear that the information and testimony you're about to provide, to the extent you provide any, will be the truth to the best of your knowledge to help you God? Thank you. And just speak loudly into the mic, we want to hear you.
Where is that going to be located on the property?
In the rear yard.
Look there, that's the side. My house, unlike, it could be like.
I would prefer to have it for the neighbor to the east because it's their rear yard as opposed to the side of it.
That's what I need to know. Because this is like right on my property. You're on top of it. House going up high, I'm a one-story house. This thing's for a tower, maybe you're not gonna see anything in that side of my house. I'm gonna be totally in the dark and it's not in there. And there was a house, one-story house. You know, right there. Not gonna get in there.
Okay, do you have any other questions for Mr. O'Hagan?
No, that's okay.
Before we go to any more question, I just want to respond to her question fully about the condenser. And we can commit as a condition to any approval to locating the condenser unit on the left, closer to lot 2.01, which is away from Ms. Jackson's property, as she's requested. We can commit to that as
And when we're saying on the left, is that,
It's the area of the house, I'm sorry. I don't know if
Is that
it's-
east, maybe?
Yeah.
east, on the eastern side in the rear yard, and I think importantly, it would be in the zoning compliant location. There's no setback variances granted for that. I mean, that you're not asking.
But we only need 3 feet and we got 10 feet of rear yard space to work with, so it should be no problem. But in regard to would that be to the east or the west, Ms. Jackson's right, phone preference that would be to the east, and certainly get to that as a condition.
Thank you.
How close are you to be deciding to find out spot?
And I'm sorry, just for the record, I don't know if the mic picked you up. The question was, how far exactly is your house going to be from your property line?
My house.
Okay,
According to our survey, your house is only 1.7 feet off the property line. And we're proposing to construct a house that is 5.5 feet from that same property line. So we're gonna be 3 times farther away from the property line than your house. And the total from house to house would be 8.2 or 7.2 feet, whatever it is. 5.5 plus 1.7. That's still more. It's like 7 feet. 7 feet.
Approximately.
5 feet 5 inches. 1 foot. I think my 7th grade son can do this.
Closer to the microphone. Can you speak closer to the microphone?
You're gonna be that close to my.
Is that red button on that one?
Right, is the mic on?
It is.
They're real close.
You're gonna be so far from me. How far from the other property?
The plans indicate that the house will be exactly 5 feet 5 inches from, or 5.5 feet from each property to be equal.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Maybe already 6 feet, I'm coming by yards.
Okay,
I'm picturing that's on a football field.
On football
That's not,
field.
yeah, that's not
2 yards.
Less than 2 yards, and 3rd and 2.
2 yards. From my house. Okay, that's 2 yards. That looks a little bit different. Let me ask some questions.
Just questions now.
Okay, that'd be it.
All right, thank you so
So
much.
I have a question for you though. How long have you lived at 3 Berry?
75.
I'm sorry?
75 years.
Oh, so I'd like to hear the testimony about what was on this lot prior.
There was a house here prior. And it was a 1-story house. Sort of then what I had now it's smaller. And it was relatively my mom's. So it was relatively.
Was it as close to your house as what they're proposing?
No, it's like, it could have been a driveway there at one time. real close to me, it's like you are driveway, side of the driveway. Yeah, it was there. So, it's gonna be-
Thank you.
Thank you
Anybody else in the public have a question?
for Mr. O'Neill.
Kevin, do you have any other witnesses?
No, that's all for us.
Okay. I have some, I know we'll have to get public comments, and I have some, legal, case law to discuss. Do you want to do, legal case law first? Do you want to hear from the public first?
Maybe the case law first.
Okay. So just real briefly, this is a special type of case, not this, particular, one in general, but they call it a vacant, isolated, undersized lot case. And we're gonna hear Mr. Asadi, he sort of referenced this earlier. So basically, I guess, prior to 1987, there was a lot of confusion and inconsistent court rulings on what are the legal standards for how you deal with a isolated, undersized lot, which means it's vacant and it's smaller than the minimum required in the lot size than in the area in the zoning ordinance. So in 1987, Judge Serpentelli, who he was the Ocean County assignment judge. I don't know if he was back then, but he sort of wrote the definitive and seminal opinion on these isolated, undersized lot cases. And the reason it gets a little confusing is because the theory is if it's a single family lot in a single family zone, the town should let them, within reason, build something. Now, maybe it's not as tall as the applicant wants, maybe it's not as wide as the applicant wants, maybe it's not as big or coverage or you name it, all those factors. And the reason that they say that is because if you were to outright deny the application, you could potentially set up the town for an inverse condemnation lawsuit. Now, condemnation is when the town takes your land to widen the street or make a park or whatever. And inverse condemnation is when the town, by its actions, sort of does something to render the property basically not worth what it should be worth. And so basically, the town said, this court says, if you don't approve something, and again, it doesn't mean you have to, but just if you don't approve something, you could be setting up the town for this inverse condemnation lawsuit. So I just want to read this from this, it's called Dahlmeyer versus Lacey Township Board of Adjustment. And it was from 1987. And the reason I like this case is because the judge said, when this type of application comes before you, the applicant should A, B, C, and D. And then it said, and after the applicant does A, B, C, and D, the board should do E, F, and G. So it's one of those few times in life where we actually have a direct playbook of what we do. So it says, Judge Serpentelli summarized what the law requires of the applicant in undersized lot cases. The applicant should, 1, be required to carry the burden of proof, as in all other cases, as to both the positive and negative criteria. 2, demonstrate that efforts were made to bring the property into conformity with the zoning ordinance by attempting to acquire adjacent property or by offering to sell the non-conforming property to the adjacent owners. So the theory is, hey, can I buy your property and then maybe that makes my lot conforming or at least more conforming. 3, submit detailed plans of the proposed home which describe its appearance and prove its compliance with building codes. 4, attempt where applicable to demonstrate compliance with the use, side yard, and setback requirements and location of the house among other homes on small tracts with similar frontages. And 5, attempt to demonstrate that the proposed use does not violate any traditional zoning purposes such as light, air, and open space. And then he continues, it says the board should, 1, evaluate the testimony to determine whether it should elicit additional information to supplement the record. 2, make specific findings of fact based upon the record to support its conclusion. 3, consider whether in lieu of denying an application, it can approve it subject to reasonable conditions which would modify the proposal and obviate or minimize any negative impact. And 4, remember to be conscientious in its review of the facts, since outright denial may amount to confiscation, thus requiring condemnation by the municipality. So that's sort of, interesting case, because we usually don't have cases which give specific. So Kevin, I know you were saying there was some discussion about, were those letters sent that we have to mark into the record or anything?
No, we didn't elect to send any offer letters to the adjacent property owners. As you see, there is no land to acquire from neighboring property owners. And my reading of Dalmeyer, where it says you should offer to purchase adjacent property or sell the subject property, is not conjunctive. It's or, not and there's no property to acquire. If there were, we would have reached out to acquire it, but the objective for the applicant is to build a home for his family to use. However, this evening when we arrived, Ms. Jackson did approach us and told us that she was interested in purchasing the property. But what I want to say is, even in an instance where a board wanted to consider that as a factor, the board would have to recognize that the applicant is entitled to a sale price that's equal to fair market value of the land, assuming all approvals have been given. Where the neighbor is under the impression that since we paid $20,000 for an uninsurable, unmarketable, lot with severe title issues, that she's entitled to buy that for the same price, which isn't the law. So she'll speak for herself, but that is what I'm preparing the board to hear.
Should the board comment on that first? Does board, or do the board members have questions about that?
I do have a question of our attorney, or Mr. Amati. You're asking us to give approvals to this lot to be buildable so that you can sell it to her as a buildable lot, which might be, I don't know, in Red Bank now, who knows? As opposed to $20,000 that he paid, which is, he made the investment in clearing the title, et cetera, hear that. But you didn't inquire, that wasn't something that he wanted to do, because what he wants to do is build, right?
That's right.
So what he wants to do is build. So he's really not interested in the second part of the process of inquiring of the neighbors on left or right or rear.
Yeah,
if they want to purchase.
If he were interested in making a quick buck, he could sell property with approvals and make a quick buck, but that's not what he wants.
But you're assuming that he's going to get approval from the board to be able to build something.
I'm not assuming that. The law requires that if a board wants to consider a neighbor who wants to, say, purchase the lot, the board and the neighbor who wishes to purchase must come forward with an offer that presumes approvals. So in other words, if she says.
Is that what you heard when you read it, Kevin?
Yeah, what I would say is there have been other cases. So yes, the applicant needs to reach out and says, can I attempt to buy your property, or you want to sell me so we can make, with the goal being
presumed approvals are
to have the lots become conforming, or at least more conforming. But in terms of your question about price, in terms of because that's always an issue. But that's and again, there's no disrespect to anyone here, but sometimes a neighbor says, yeah, I'll buy it or I'll sell it. I'll sell you my property for $1 million, or I'll buy your property for 1,000. And I'm just joking to make a point. But the law does recognize that the purchase price would have to be, the purchase price as if development approvals were in place. Now, but we don't, it's sort of a real awkward position for, court or zoning board to be in to say what the price, but there is gonna be an issue as to, have the offers been made or communicated.
I'm a little confused by the, I guess I need to tell me down for me or whatever, but he bought the lot without approvals to begin with.
Correct. So he bought the lot as is his right, and whether he paid, 20,000 or whatever, he apparently, per the testimony, bought it based upon some imperfect title issues and some imperfect tax situations. So now, that is what it is under this scenario, with the Dallmeyer case and the isolated, undersized, vacant lot syndrome. If he proves that he attempted to acquire or sell the land to the adjacent property owners, and either they didn't make an offer or weren't interested in selling, or they couldn't come to the price, then he would be, if he satisfies all the other criteria that we just talked about, you were satisfied, you could approve the application, or you would say things like, I need it a little smaller, I need a larger setback, or, less coverage, like you would do on many other applications.
Does the interaction tonight with the other resident of Berry Street and his conversation that she offered tonight solidify his statement, saying his position that he has received an offer? We know he's not tried to sell it, but does that validate part of the judge's ruling that he has to make an attempt at offering her to or receiving it from her? Does that qualify?
If a property owner were to appear, if an adjacent property owner were to appear tonight and say, I'm interested in buying the property and I want to pay what he paid, which is 20,000, which doesn't take into account so many other things and expenses that were incurred. Okay. But if she were to come up and say, I'd like to buy it from him now that he's done all the work to fix the property, I'll take it for what he paid, no problem. Okay, that would not qualify as a bona fide offer. In the past this microphone's driving me crazy. In the past where I've had this issue come up, particularly in Colts Neck, in a case that was very memorable, the neighbor came up and said, I want to buy this land from the applicant. So what the board did was they called timeout. They said, okay, the neighbor should go get an appraisal and get an appraisal, assuming the approvals are given, which is what the law requires. And that would be the price that he should offer. So we took a timeout. The neighbor finally got his appraisal. He didn't like the number and he wouldn't make an offer for that number, and we proceeded. So that's the way it played out then. If
that was a bona fide offer made in writing to the owner.
He wouldn't make the offer.
He didn't make the offer.
So what the board wanted him to do was to, in between meetings, to go get an appraisal done for the property, and that appraisal would become evidence as to the fair market value, so that when he comes back and says, I offered fair market value, here's the appraisal, the board can consider that. But once he saw the value of the property, he wouldn't make an offer in that case. So that's the way I've seen it work. It's a peculiar situation.
It's peculiar, but it doesn't settle up that if this, what happened to you this evening, qualifies as a bona fide offer. That's a question, because it doesn't have approvals. The lot doesn't have any approvals. So it can't be a bona fide offer even if she made it.
If she were to come and say, well, I'll pay 20,000 because that's what they paid, that's an example of what would not be a bona fide offer. If she were to come up and say, I will undertake to obtain an appraisal, and I will look at that appraisal report, and I will offer whatever that number is, then I think the board might have reason to break.
If the number was 200,000 and it was an acceptable offer, and we said, you have the approvals. That's, I guess I'm trying to weave my way through the legal part of it.
Yeah, no, excellent questions. First off, Mr. Asadi, how many contiguous properties are there to this particular property?
There's one to the west, there's one to the south, which is the rear yard neighbor we heard from. And there are two to the east that front on South Pearl Street.
Okay, so there's 4 contiguous property owners, and Sharon, to your point, most of the time, what happens is people send the letters and the applicants will come here and say, here, I sent a certified letter. And I said, we're having a planning board meeting or a zoning board meeting on such and such a date. So I'm gonna, if you give me an answer, I'm gonna, rely on this and present it to the board. And a lot of times people will say, hey, I sent this certified mail, didn't get any response. And obviously we wouldn't have it like sent the day before the meeting. And you would give them notice, and usually, whatever that means, or traditionally, they'll come in and say, hey, I didn't get any response, and no one ever says anything. Now, sometimes, as Kevin Asadi just referenced, occasionally someone will say, well, wait, I might be interested. And so that generally lends itself to the next level when, well, you would go and discuss pricing and things like that, which we don't really get involved in. But again, the law does allow there's nothing here that says he has to give it at such and such a price. The law says that we're allowed to, would be a reasonable price, which would assume that approvals have been granted and whatever that makes it worth.
But the law does corner us into making an approval and a marketable property.
No, it doesn't.
Say it again.
The law does corner us into either accepting a potential lawsuit down the road, or making that property marketable so he can then negotiate it.
Well, there's
whether it goes up, down, with the price stays the same, it doesn't matter. He can't do anything with it unless we make it marketable, since he's clear title.
So
I want to see something concerning, how I think Delmeyer might apply here. And I don't think that Delmeyer says absolutely 100% this must be done or else, but it says that it's a factor that a board could consider. And there are other factors that the board would consider. In this instance, 2 reasons why I didn't send letters offering this property for sale. One, you heard my client. He does want to use this property for, a reason that I believe in, and I support. And secondly, this property was listed on the MLS under a year ago, and nobody would touch it. Everybody in the world, not to mention the adjacent property owners, less than a year ago, could have engaged the realtor and made an offer about the property. This isn't years we're talking under a year ago, this property was on the market.
Was it market value upon building that it would be approved to be built on? Was in the MLS when it first came on, was it listed in the MLS at a market value to build on?
It was
to buy property and build on?
It was listed for $99,000. It was obviously undersized.
But it didn't have approvals to build.
Yeah.
So that's where my confusion is that.
Well, here it is.
I speculate.
It takes lawyers years to figure out, wrap their heads around this thing.
You have 5 more minutes to tell me about it.
So
You have to dumb it down.
you're asking for a variance, and the nature of the variance is a hardship. And a hardship variance, as you heard, is appropriate where due to dimension or topographical conditions of a property, it would become a hardship to be able to develop it. And you certainly heard testimony, and common sense will tell us all that that is what we have here with a lot this small. So where you have a hardship that you recognize, and I assume you would all recognize this presents that kind of hardship situation. Once the negative criteria is then satisfied that there would be no substantial detriments, and you heard the testimony, that the board should grant approvals for those kinds of variances. The Downmeyer case says, yes, that should be done, but the court there suggests that the applicant or the board should consider whether or not the applicant offered to acquire land that might make the lot more conforming or to sell the land to an adjacent
Make
property.
another property more conform.
Right, but at the same time, the court says, well, we also have to be fair to the applicant. So if somebody wants to buy that land, they have to buy, they can't offer $10 for it, or in this case, $20,000. They have to offer a price that's reflective of approvals, a lot that's approved for buildings, because after all, we have a hardship. And somebody should be able to use their land for something. Right, so that's the concept.
Okay, let's go back to Delmeyer. So Delmeyer says that, but does Delmeyer say acknowledge in his brief or resolution that this property was so compromised? I mean, are the general undersized lots compromised with title issues and other issues that you experienced? Was that addressed in there? I mean, I'm sorry.
The Downmeyer case didn't have that sort of lot.
Didn't have that.
We pulled this lot from the abyss for Red Bank with the work we did after closing. We literally took this lot from, no title insurance company would touch it. And my client took a big risk. He gambled $20,000. The owner took $20,000, gave us basically nothing. And we had to then go to court and go to resolve very large tax liens at great expense. So that.
And quiet title action.
And quiet title action at great risk and expense to the applicant. And this is after the property.
And not that this matters a whole lot, but I think in generally, the quiet title actions, you basically have to trace the title back for generations and genealogy and.
Yeah, we had to find every owner and title going all the way back to the break in the chain. And these aren't people, they were real estate tax lien investment companies out of Virginia and, people that we had to track down, we had to go through.
No, I think
We understand that. That sounds like a dreadful process. Is it appropriate, I'm gonna go on a limb here, to bring Mrs. Jackson up and ask her if she's interested and she doesn't
have to do it on the
spot, but is she interested in making an offer at fair market value for this land?
And Madam Chair, can I just ask one other question? Kevin, I know you were just referencing your Colts Neck experience, and I know you sort of said the board took a time out and said, come back. I mean, was that sort of what you were applying?
Yeah, I mean, in that instance, the gentleman who was adjacent to the applicant came up and represented to the board that he wanted to buy the property at fair market value, assuming approvals. So the board said, okay, well, we need to explore this. So they said, why don't you go get an appraisal? Because he was offering $10 and we were asking for $1 million, see how that goes. So it was on him to go get an appraisal and then present to us an offer.
And I guess my concern is there one of those 4 contiguous owners who aren't here, who maybe would sell to you their land or do something to make this more conforming? I don't know.
We couldn't purchase a developed lot, like we couldn't purchase Ms. Jackson's property and then knock down her house to build ours. That's not practical, that's not sensible, that's not what Downmeyer requires. Downmeyer would require, if we had, a property with excess land adjacent to us, we could then approach the property owner of that excess land and say, would you mind subdividing off, X number of square feet so that we could have a conforming lot? And if they say, yeah, then we work it out. If they say no, we go back to the board and report.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry. I mean, my concern is whether the application's approved or denied. I just want to make sure that we do everything right and assume for the purpose of this discussion, you get the approval. And I don't know that you will, but I don't want you to have an open, exposed gap should there be any problems. So I'm just trying to, I want to do everything right. So I just, whatever.
We would be willing to, as a condition of approval, prior to resolution adoption, we could send certified letters, asking if anybody wants to get an appraisal and offer us, money for the property. It's not what we want, and I doubt anybody would actually do that. But we could do it for housekeeping, certainly. But I don't think there's any property to actually purchase. I'm looking at the survey right now, and there is no property to purchase.
No lot in that part of town has excess land, unless you're talking about the back. Sometimes they have
Even in the
the
back,
back, but not on the sides.
that's correct.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Is that pretty good?
So, and we also still have public comments too at some point.
Right.
Well, can we take public comments now? How's that? And then, and we can sort of cogitate on this while we're taking public comments and listening at the same time. So yes, come on up again.
All right, and just for the record, you're Mark Allen, you were previously sworn, you're still under oath, thank you.
All right, so public comments, I appreciate the talk about trying to make lots bigger rather than small properties and build in my own. So I appreciate the conversation about, for instance, Ms. Jackson, the potential of making it a lot bigger. I also was looking at the property in that land over the years, and it was basically $100,000 was way too much to expand, the other question I have for the board is would the lot need approval if we weren't going to develop it? Like if myself or the staff wanted to just purchase the land and just to expand our footprint and maybe put a garden back there or something like that, would it be any sort of approval?
Generally speaking, and Mr. Body and I have a lot of experience in this, but under the doctrine of merger, if Ms. Jackson purchased adjacent land, which was undersized and it was vacant, it would sort of, by operation of law, merge into one big lot. There's a lot of exceptions to that. We've just had a couple.
There is a provision in our ordinance that does say that if an owner owns two contiguous lots, automatically they are merged.
Merged into one lot. You wouldn't have to go through them.
Correct.
So without speaking to Ms. Jackson, if I was to acquire that land, or actually just conversation with Ms. Jackson, actually that was sort of plan also, like acquire it just. And also just as I'm kind of looking at the maps and looking at things, like again, that property that's catty corner to the property in question and backs up to my yard, that's been vacant for 20 years. A house this size would be, a much more suitable house for that property size. It still probably requires side variances, but it's a deep lot. I don't want to pull out my phone, but much more accommodating site for a house of this size as opposed to a 33 by 50 piece of land. So there are options. I'm not sure if it's the marketability or that property is for sale or anything like that, but there are different options, just a stone's throw away, literally. That might be better suited for this a house like this. Again, but having the government tell him where he has to buy is to build the land. I'm not suggesting that at all, but.
All right, but that's your opinion.
That's fine. Thank you.
That's it. Thank you very much. And thank you for the nice thing you said about it. 35 years, so 37 seconds.
I recommend locking your doors, but anybody else from the public? Mrs. Jackson, come on up.
Property is so tiny, it's really small. See, again, picture this house on. There is no, it's like yard, there is no yard. It's nothing there. I live next door and I know I've probably been there all my life. And I know how small it is, and I can't see, someone's for his mother. A 3-bedroom house for his mother, now I understand that, it's like, why you need to house. grandkids, your kids. Did your grandkids be living there? No. Visiting, but not.
That's what it is.
Yeah, but you live in your house.
Okay, probably
Yeah.
direct your comments to the board. I got it.
I mean, you live in Ridge Avenue, you don't have to speak there. House, that's what I'm just thinking, I think it's eventually gonna be just.
Overcrowded, is that what you're saying?
Areas gonna be overcrowded. And then part of the parking, there, that street is covered with cars, I don't know when you ever took a picture of that street. Go down there now, you'll see how many cars are parked on Berry Street, South Road, and it's ridiculous. So, I mean, in the winter time when it snows, crowds say go down the street because all the cars are parked on the street. So it's no way possible to bring this parking the streets clear. Just because one house on the street does not mean that the houses, both houses, 12. A two-family home on the corner facing Southborough. And opposite my street, Berry Street, there's another two families in there. And you go down one house, the next house down is another two family. There are other homes. There's that also, the house on the corner, there's one family, another house, and then there's another lot, another empty lot, Southborough. And there are cars and trucks all over that street. There's cars parked in front of my house. So you can't say there's no cars parked in that street. I have a hard time getting out getting out my driveway because of these cars parked. I mean, I don't see it's something totally overcrowded. Just because one house is does not mean that that's the long. I know, I understand we used to try to carry to everybody thought we were the ordinance. I didn't have a hard time getting library books. So I know, no, I'm in Red Bank, it's this week Red Bank. Not in this. My whole life, schools here, I know. Yeah. So, my opinion, that house is too big for that tiny lot. It's a place.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Jackson. Yes, come on up, back.
Hello, good evening. If you could just state your name, please.
My name is Jeremy Jackson. I live at 3 Berry Street.
You know what? I'm just going to swear you in. Welcome to the Red Bank Zoning Board. Do you swear that the information and testimony you're about to provide, to the extent you provide it, will be the truth, to the best of your knowledge, to help you God? Thank you.
The case that you brought up earlier, the German case,
Dahlmeyer.
it stated something like about interference of the other house next to it.
I think it said that the board, as they always do, needs to consider the impact and make sure that the proposal doesn't violate traditional zoning purposes regarding light, air, and open space.
Okay, the house that they're proposing to build, it will block light, air, and space. There will probably be no room between both of our houses. Like, no, I'm little, I won't be able to fit through that. And then all the bedrooms are on that side of the house. All the bedrooms of 3 Berry Street is on that side of the lot. So the house, the bedrooms wouldn't get any air. They'll just get a house. No light, just a house. No freshness, just a house. There would be no proper ventilation for us. Because the wind flow that does come through, it would be blocked by the home that they are proposing. The traffic. Central Avenue is an industrial road. There's the asphalt building, the Globe Petroleum, there's the storage unit across the street. There's every worker that works at these units parks their car on the street. My kids, they are not able to play on that street until after 5 o'clock. There's no room to play on that street. There's no room to park on that street. Pray that there's not a new worker that doesn't know that somebody lives at 3 Berry Street. It doesn't block our driveway where we cannot get in our house. But we want to build a house and block off the way to the street. Do that. And it doesn't only just affect us because the guy next to us on Central Avenue, South Pearl Street, South Pearl Street, he has a family, he has children, he had a nice yard going on, that would interfere with their space as well. Not only just that, but as well as living. And that I don't even know how to explain it, but that little bit of property, the guy that first bought that property, I denied him on the
Sorry, could you say that again? I couldn't hear
The
you.
first owner that bought it after the house collapsed and they knocked it down, he was unable to build on that house because it was that property, because it was so. But we want instead of, and he just wanted to probably build a one level family, but we want to go up. We're lucky. It's an interference to the.
Right, thank you very much, Ms. Jackson.
Anybody else from the public have a comment? I never asked for comments from the board. I'm sorry, got a little out of sequence. Anybody want to comment now?
Was it considered to build a smaller house?
A one-story house, if it's just your mother?
Yeah, you know, speaking to the mic, if you don't mind.
Are you speaking to me?
Well, to anyone who can answer, was there consideration given,
The prior house
that was there? It sounds like a small one-story house with a small footprint.
did you consider that?
Is that a possibility, or you just want to do the 2.5 stories with 3 bedrooms?
I just wanted to be comfortable, because grandkids come over a lot, vacation, they need somewhere to stay.
Yeah.
If mom doesn't want to move down, though, is it turn into a rental? If mom doesn't want to move down, does it turn into a rental?
Oh, she's gonna, that's not even an option, I'm not, it's gonna be her gift, whether she likes it or not, she's gonna like it. I want the experience.
Mr. Cavanaugh, I want to also, point out a fact in your ordinance that, Mr. O'Neill touched upon, which is for a residential dwelling, the minimum first floor, square foot, area is 700. And ours for a 2-story house, it's bigger. Oh, it's bigger, one for scratch that comment.
Okay. Made a 1-story
I'll
house.
say it this way, excuse me, I'm sorry. The fact that it's 2 stories does allow us to condense the footprint, which does promote light and more space for the neighbors. We are providing 3 times more setback than the neighbor that you just heard commenting, who's only 1.7 feet away. We're gonna be 5.5 feet away from the property line, and we're able to do that because it's a 2-story house. So we're able to squeeze more space, more open space on the lot by making it the minimum amount of square footage that your ordinance allows. And but we have to go up a story to make it livable.
But there was one there that was a 1-story. There was a 1-story there before.
So
We're not in there with the layout or the size of what that house.
what's the square footage requirement if you just do a 1-story? Not, I know what it is for the 2.
If you are 2 zone, minimum house size for 1 story.
depends on whether or not it's a multifamily. So efficiencies are 750. 1 bedroom units, 900 square feet, 2 bedroom units. So this applies if it's a multifamily dwelling, not single family. And single family, so other uses, it says no requirements.
I don't know, because
Yeah.
my remembrance was, it's definitely 700 square feet, 2-story building. And I think it's over 1,000 square feet. For a story.
Sorry, say that again, I didn't hear you.
I believe it's 7,700 square feet, minimum lot size in the first floor, 2-story. 1-story, I believe.
And for a 1-story, it goes up to what you think? 1,000.
That would be all the setbacks. Would be small.
So I think we're,
Can we
the
find-
choice is either 2-story where you have more space between the adjacent properties, or 1-story where maybe you get more sunlight, but it's a little bit closer to the property line. A lot closer to the property line.
And I would apply to. Special.
Can you find that out though?
Argue that you are what?
No, yeah, no, I'm just saying,
Can that be found out, because
it's big. This is a big
This
house.
is important. It's a big
Yeah.
house. This is
For that
important to the
property.
whole neighborhood.
Here.
I am grateful when that there's someone willing to spend their money to bring a lot.
Sharon, you
back.
think?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm grateful that there's someone willing to spend their money to bring a lot back. But how we bring it back is what our job is, and that's important, how we bring that lot back. And this doesn't have off-street parking. The parking is the problem on that street. And again, perhaps it's just about perspective. But we do have an assumption down here that we're gonna have a parking space when we pull up to our yard. We're gonna pull up into our yard and have a parking space. Not everybody comes with that expectation. Okay, so we have a large house with substantial space for a full family, which is a great thing. But the outside doesn't match the inside right now, and we need to make that work as far as the neighborhood goes and as far as that house itself goes. The yard, the size of this house is a little bit overbearing for that lot. It's a little bit more. Again, is it possible? Yeah, you could probably squeeze a little bit more if you went right to the property line. But that ordinances aren't written to do that. So you've given your client probably what he's asked for, the maximum he can get on that spot.
That's the minimum.
The maximum he can get on that spot.
We're proposing the minimum amount of first floor area that your ordinance will allow, because it doesn't want bungalows that take it.
Okay.
Your ordinance wants a minimum size house, and we are providing you the smallest house that we can under your ordinance.
For the first floor though,
For first
for first floor, but you're going with 2.5.
But
And then
about
the other
as a function of setback, or for being able to provide parking, which there's no opportunity to provide parking on the lot. We're already giving you the smallest possible footprint that any structure on this house could be. Yes, it's 2 stories, but it's the smallest footprint that your ordinance will allow on the lot. So we're not maximizing anything, we're minimizing. We're maximizing.
did you
Consider having
not
that,
have story of an attic, have no attic, essentially,
I mean, you do have basement.
or storage as well?
We're 8 feet under.
I'm sorry, you're not getting in the mic speaking.
You're 8 feet under.
Right, I understand that you're under the height requirement, so you don't need a variance.
Right, is that what you're saying? But it also,
So it might be.
Shorter than most of the houses.
Well, most of the houses
Although the house.
on Pearl.
Central.
Or what?
There's one house on Central, 2.
They're on the.
Yes, I think she has a
East
question.
side.
I think she's asking a question. What's the question in that?
The houses are taller, but the lots are about 3 times the size.
But they're not wider.
But they're not wider.
They're deeper.
The houses are wide,
They're deeper.
or just they're deeper. So their square footage is in the depth. If the width is the same, the height's gonna be the same.
Was there somebody in the back who wanted to make a comment?
I'm gonna come back up.
Just a really quick question. So if you reduce the house to meet the 35, the maximum lot coverage of 35%, how would that work? Instead of having it 45, you're in,
Floor plan would be a variance,
right?
because it would be less than the minimum.
But I think that it's one of the issues that everyone is having is like how much space is taking up. So we're going that
It's also
variance for
creating-
that one.
Creating a house that doesn't meet the standards of both the master plan and the land use.
Right.
Would be qualitatively comparable to the neighborhood.
And is it correct that the house is
Taking up, did you say 45% of lot or 48 maybe? 48, it's, so half of the lot is open. It's the part, it's largely the back, correct?
Yeah, I guess the back is. the
Little,
largest
little on the
setback.
side, little in the front, right?
The house is the largest setback.
Right.
But the setback is the same as the house next door.
Right.
On one side. The other side is 1.7 feet, we're at 5.5.
Right, all right, that gives me,
Another idea, I'm sorry to do this, but
I prefer to see
see the houses lining up on a street. But what if you push this one towards the back? Does that, you know, it would create a little more space next to 3 Berry Street.
I don't, you know,
With all due respect, I don't see how that really changes. Because we, again, we're 3 times as far from the property line as their house is. It makes it over 7 feet between the houses. If they had a one-time shared driveway.
Just speak into the mic, please.
If they had a one-time shared driveway, it was probably 5 feet.
No, I said we didn't share.
So it was.
Yeah.
Exactly what I thought I heard.
Size of it.
So,
But they have gotten used to having empty space next to it. That's, I think that's the problem. Yeah.
I understand.
I understand.
I think we should find out though what, because you had said something about for multiple houses. I'd like to know the square footage, I guess you'd need for a smaller first floor. And it's a big house, so maybe the variance would be the square footage of it. You know, like we would just,
Okay, again, try, just try, if it goes for a one-story house, the first floor, the one story has to be larger than 700 square feet.
yeah, but how much larger, what is it, like, for sure?
It's a few hundred square feet.
More.
And then.
I'm sorry, you have to speak into the mic.
And then these distances. would be nice. So I would like to- that we let them sit. And like I said, 1,000 square feet, the idea that 5.5 feet setback might increase to 3 feet. Easily. To make this house bigger and fitting in the lot. The God said, architectonically, the issue of going up. Reducing people. So that's what we've done, we have 2 stories, so that was footprint is small. I mean, you look at the plans, you look at the room sizes, they're not very big. Kitchens are like. Bedrooms are the 2 secondary bedrooms are about 10 by 11. Getting smaller than that, you can't fit that in. So, and bathrooms are, they're minimal sized bathrooms, 5 by 9. Nothing here that has lots of space. It doesn't exist. The dining room is as big as a cable one.
You know, I'm curious about the size of the prior house. Maybe we can get some testimony from that, from the neighbor.
I can find it really.
Was it, you know, was it,
It's a 1-story building, 1 second. I found the property record for it, but you could go.
Ms. Jackson, did you have a comment you wanted to make?
He is more manageable setting.
Maybe while we wait for Shauna, I could ask a question. Mr. O'Neill, you testified that trying to put in a two-car garage on the first floor would be like crazy. Did you think about maybe providing a one-car garage to give some off-street parking to this?
We looked at it, but again, that would make the first floor of the house almost unusable because it's an L-shaped house with fortunately just doesn't really function.
You wouldn't have room for a driveway, essentially.
No, because if we
To get to the back.
we have to push the house so far back to get the driveway that there isn't enough.
Right.
Because we thought about that too. If we can push it back and then create a driveway, that was some space.
Yes, comment?
Thank you again, Mark Allen.
Alan,
So yeah, just to, let's say, you know, the building was referenced as a two-story house. I think it was mentioned as being a 2.5-story house. So, you know, the previous house was close to the other house. They were close together, very little setback. But again, I just want to suggest or visualize a 1-story house being close to another house as opposed to 2.5-story house.
So you would essentially have two small 1-story houses next to each other, that's what
I'm
they're saying. Yeah.
Correct. They're about the same height.
And now it would be different. if
Yes,
this is-
I'm guessing it'd be almost like twice as tall as Miss Jackson's house, as the surrounding, as the next door house, which would seem to a lot more light, sun, air than 1-story house would.
All right, Shauna, what are you gonna show around? That's everyone, you can show it to Mr. Asadi too, but what is that?
I'll just turn on, sorry. So what I am showing the board right now is a picture of the house that was there prior to the demolition, and I believe 3 Berry. I did find a picture of it.
All right, so we'll show that to the board members and then we'll show it to Mr. Asadi and his team.
What's that information?
It's the old house.
it's the house, the picture of the house that.
We have the square footage, you know.
No, there isn't one. It's just the side by side.
I just wanted to point out that if you look at the houses on Central and South Pearl, they're 2-story houses, probably less than 10 feet apart. That is the development. The character of the neighborhood, because that's the character of the neighborhood, not just on Pearl Street, but houses that were built in the 1920s or before tended to be close together because the lots were small. And the only time they were wider is if they had a garage to a driveway to a detached garage. So this is the way the neighborhood is.
Sir, are there any on Pearl or Central or Berry 2-story houses, 2.5-story houses like the one that you're proposing next to a 1-story? Well,
No, I mean next to a 1-story,
There are no 1-story houses.
except for Miss Jackson.
Although we have really dominant spike is if you look at two houses. This is
So I just have a question for Mr. Williams. I'm showing you the image that Missy Banks pulled up on her screen. And Missy Banks, you said this was the previous house that existed on the lot next door to the neighbor's house that's present tonight at lot 1.02.
Correct, that is from, I believe, 1999.
Okay. Could you describe some observations about what you see in this image and how it might relate to this application?
Again, it is a 1.5, technically these are 1.5 stories. So it's a 1.5 story house it looks to me from this observation that the distance between the houses would be less than what you're proposing, and that the setback from the street is less than what we.
Can you give an estimate of when, say, this property, a house like this might have been built? As an architect, you may know some history, and you're a Red Bank architect. Do you have any insight as to the era in which a house such as this may have been first built?
My guess would be these are called bungalow style houses. They were
Do you see bungalow style houses that may have been prevalent in the 1920s, often being constructed in Red Bank today?
No.
Are you aware of any bungalow style houses being constructed in Red Bank currently?
Not that I know. Actually,
yes,
not in Red Bank, but I know. Developed. Steve Bryant?
Sorry, you have to speak into the mic.
I've developed two in Steve that are actually smaller than this, and one in Middletown that was comparable. And again, they were lots with houses on them, built before zoning regulations were created. And so that made them, as Mr. Kennedy was saying, in society, become isolated. Precise lots. But they were our housing. So they were usually this nation.
I want to assert my authority here as the
acting chair. I think we need to come to some sort of resolution tonight.
and
I'm going to put Mr. Kennedy on the spot to maybe lay out our options. Sure. We could go ahead and vote to approve or deny the application. I'm going to say what
I think the options are, and I'll not let him finish. We could also postpone to see if there is, in fact, or could be a bona fide offer to buy the property.
Which does not exist at present.
What do you
think, Mr. Kennedy?
I thought that was excellent, and I would say ditto. But I'll add to that is, so a couple of things. I put a little cheat sheet together of some of the, at least what I've taken to be some of the more salient points. So there's a concern among some as to whether or not you need those official buy-sale letters just to administratively close that. Clearly, appears to be some who have concerns about the size, and there's a question as to whether or not the home size could be reduced, or whether that reduction would compromise the functionality and marketability of the home, because clearly you're going to build a home, you want a home that's as modern as can be. There was a question about can we find out for sure the minimum size requirements for the home, if it's a 1-story or a 2-story. I think we were sort of all saying we might not be sure. There might be a concern about maybe can we have more pictures about the neighborhood context. And Sean, if you can, maybe we can get a picture, that downloaded picture, and we can enter that. So Kevin, we have, as the chair was suggesting, we can vote tonight. Knowing that there might be some open questions, or did you want to take some time to sort of see if there's any, those issues can be addressed, and maybe the house can't be any smaller, or maybe it can, or, and it's always a little tough to think about changing plans in the bright lights of this room. So sometimes some added space is sometimes a good thing. So Kevin, I mean, before the board sort of says, are you looking to vote tonight, or would you like to, I think earlier you called it a timeout? And continuation.
If any, we have, 2 of the 4 adjacent property owners here tonight, and I haven't heard either one of them express any interest in making a buy offer this evening, but if I'm incorrect about that, they have the opportunity to come up now and say it. But we haven't heard that yet, and I believe they probably have no intention of making a bona fide offer.
In the beginning, you said that we have the right to postpone.
Well, that's what we're talking,
That's what we're talking about now, Ms. Jackson.
But do we have to make offer until after them?
Well, Mr. Asadi was talking about another case where he had indicated that the board took a continuation and gave the affected neighbors an opportunity to get an appraisal if they wanted. But anyway, so Kevin, do you want a vote tonight?
Well, I just heard an adjacent property owner indicate that they would like to get the property appraised, find out the fair market value, pursuing approvals, and maybe they'll make an offer. If the board's moved by that, then I think this would be a time to break, and that would be reasonable to me. If the neighbors representing to the board that they want to undertake to get an appraisal for that purpose, I think it's best to break at this time to give them that opportunity.
All right, and I would just, you would have time to think about this. We're gonna get into a new hearing date, but, you know, you need to talk with your, either, you know, you don't have to do it now because I don't have to be too much pressure, but you know what you can do, and that's, so, Shauna, what type of continuation date are we looking at?
We can do November, November 2nd.
November 2nd, 2023, at 6:00 PM. And, Kevin Asadi, I'm assuming you're, gonna say, let's not have new notice.
Correct.
And Kevin, do you, on behalf of your client, consent to extend the time frame within which the board has to act?
Yeah, I think consensus.
Okay, thank you. So, we're gonna have a motion to carry this application to November 2nd, 2023, without any further notice. So to our friends in the back, please come back November 2nd, 2023, 6:00 PM. And if any of your friends left, I'm sorry, 6:30. 6:30. If any of your friends left, let them know, because you're not gonna get another certified letter, from Mr. Asadi. Okay.
Okay, I'll make that.
motion,
I'll second.
Sharon seconds.
Anne Curry,
Yes,
Eileen Hogan,
Yes.
Ben Euro, Sharon Lee, Vincent Light,
Yes.
Paul Cagnon,
Yes.
Anna Cruz, and Eugene Horowitz.
Thank you.
thank you. We'll see you in November.
We're gonna go to law.
Yeah.
Work on that one page.
We need a little break. Yeah.
Yeah.
The judge.
5 minutes?
Yeah.
5 minutes?
Already named 7 people before me.
But that was because Raymond is not here, so
You already named 7 people before me.
Raymond and Amanda.
Amanda's an alternate.
I know there's.
Yeah,
Okay, so
I think
what
we're
if-
getting too many.
Yes, exactly. I would be the case in only 7 votes.
Okay, so
I
it's
don't
only
consider
7.
them.
Okay. Okay, understood.
Here's my question.
Okay. I'm still getting used to
I
it,
have to look.
Yeah.
Send us an email.
but I appreciate.
I
you
didn't think
taking
it
the
made
time.
sense.
These are only, yeah, these are only.
Okay.
No, you know, and I mean, I'm just gonna say this, I don't know if this is right or not, but,
Then all of
you know,
it.
you could send them directly to, ahead of time, like if it's,
And I'll
if
correct
it's,
it for you.
yeah. If it's.
I know the others don't.
You shouldn't have to be
Well,
doing this.
some of them were substantive and I got them yesterday. and I didn't chance to look at
Yeah.
them substantive, so it really wasn't.
Oh, all right,
Just
that's
to be
fine.
like-
I mean, if you get them a week before, then absolutely.
No, yeah, you're not.
But we don't get the.
No,
Okay.
a few days, but like if it's.
Yeah.
The art.
I would
Oh, I
just
agree.
send
That's
it.
why I didn't
Just
take
send
the
it.
beat of time.
I will
Yeah, that's
send
why I
it to you.
handed it to
Yeah.
you, because this was the first opportunity.
Yeah, no, that's great, thank you.
Oh, if we get them early.
And you know what, and now, on the drive, I'll revise that resolution. And yeah.
They just want to so that nobody can go on.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, sorry.
Yeah. We'll wait for you, don't worry.
Yeah.
I think it's fair. Thank you.
Paul Cagnon,
Here.
Anna Cruz,
Eugene Horowitz,
Okay, we're reassembled and ready for our second applicant.
thank you for your patience.
Let's get going.
Madam Chair, so we'll just do a couple real quick preliminary procedural things here. Thank you. First and foremost, we are going to swear in Shauna Ebanks, our Director of Community Development. Shauna, do you swear that the information and testimony you're about to provide, to the extent you're providing, be the truth, the best of your knowledge, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you. And is there anyone here who had any questions, comments, or concerns regarding the sufficiency of the notice they received? Seeing none, the board secretary and Shauna and I reviewed the notes and found everything to be in order, so it'd be my opinion that we have jurisdiction to proceed tonight. And what we'll do is mark into the record what we as the board have before us. A1 is the development application. A2 is the intent to proceed dated June 29th, 2023. A3 is the survey prepared by Stephen Edwards dated April 6th, 2021. A4 is the plot plan prepared by Patrick Ward of Insight Engineering, and that's June 14th, 2023. A5 is the proposed new construction plans and architectural plans prepared by Catherine Franco, consisting of 4 sheets, and that's dated April 25th, 2022. A6 is the Shauna Ebanks review memorandum dated October 2nd, 2023. And this is application, the applicant's attorney is Martin Flager. Good evening, and as the chair said, welcome, and after you introduce yourself, we can mark this into the record.
Mr. Kennedy, members of the board, Martin Flager from Martin Flager on behalf of the applicant, Timothy Shea. Property 211 River Street has an existing home on it currently. It currently has 5 non-conformities, which we're going to make less non-conforming to the extent we can. And we do need one other variance for the front facing garage. We want to try to add a garage. Given the width of the property, we need to have a variance for that. I do have the applicant here, but we're going to skip over that unless the board has questions, but he is here to answer.
Very good.
He has owned the property for 27 years, that he represents. He's now going to build this house for him and his wife to live in. I also have Mr. Ward and as well.
Sure. And let me just ask you 2 quick questions. Your applicant, your client is the owner of the property, and there's a single family home at the site right now, correct?
That's right.
And does your applicant live there?
He does not.
Is it?
But his daughter lives there.
Okay. Thank you.
He will move into it. She doesn't know she's leaving. She will. He actually.
Televised.
So tonight we had a lot of surprises. The first application was a nicer surprise than this one.
That's right.
Okay, so what we're gonna do is we'll swear in Pat Ward. Good evening, Mr. Ward. If you could just state your name and business address.
Sure, Patrick Ward with Insight Engineering, 1955 Route 34, Warren, New Jersey.
And you're testifying tonight in your capacity as a licensed.
Professional engineer, professional planner.
Okay, good evening. Do you swear that the information and testimony you're about to provide will be the truth, the best of your knowledge, to help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Do you want to do your credentials real quick, because we have a lot of new people here?
Sure, yeah, this is actually the first time I've been in front of the zoning board, but I am a licensed professional engineer and professional planner in the state of New Jersey. Both licenses are valid. Been a licensed professional engineer for coming up on 10 years and a planner for 8. I have a bachelor's of science in civil engineering from Drexel University. I've been with Insight my whole career, 14 years now. I've testified in multiple boards where Kevin has been present, but multiple land use boards throughout Monmouth County, Ocean County, and then up.
Okay,
Thank you, thank
I
you.
appreciate
I think we can
accept.
Mr. Ward, you visit the site, you prepared the plans for this evening.
That's correct.
You maybe describe to the board a quick overview of the property and what you're proposing.
Yeah, so we're in the RB1 zone, which requires 4,500 square feet. We're a hair under that at 4,497.5 square feet. And what's driving us to be slightly under is the narrowness of the lot. So the RB1 zone requires 50-foot wide lots. Our lot is 35 feet. And so a lot of what I'll discuss is related to the lot width or lot frontage, I should say. Where we are on River Street, we're at almost the western terminus of River Street on the south side. We're near the entrance to the Red Bank Primary School. And if you're familiar with this little stretch, the houses on our side of the street sit several feet higher than the street sidewalk. So the frontage of this property and other ones near us, there's large retaining walls and steps that kind of bisect those retaining walls up to the front door. And that's no different than what we have today. The applicant seeking to remove all existing site improvements and construct a new 2.5-story dwelling, a driveway and an in-ground swimming pool. So we have an existing single-story dwelling, located towards the front of the property. It's about 22.3 feet wide today and sits about 10 feet above the sidewalk elevation. So the grade at the front of the house is 36, the sidewalk's at 26 for reference. To make up this elevation, there are retaining walls along the right of way, supported by a series of stairs to the front door. And we have no off-street parking today. Site served by public utilities, mostly from River Street, except for sanitary sewer. There's a sanitary sewer easement at the rear of our property. And we're going to seek to keep all of those existing utilities as possible. With any upgrades needed, we'll take care of. In terms of proposed conditions, I think now is a good time to enter that exhibit. Marty.
We passed along a colored rendering. I think it's A7 now.
A7. That's an illustrated rendering, prepared by Insight Engineering, and the date on that?
October 5th.
Thank you.
So what this is this is an aerial from May. So it's a recent aerial, and this color renders our plot. And kind of gives you an idea of where the home's going to be constructed, where the pool is obviously as well, but also in relation to the neighboring properties, how big our footprint is, and then also, I think more importantly, our setback. So the applicant's proposing a 2.5-story home. Now, the existing home is 22.3 feet wide, the new home is 21 feet wide, so slightly narrower, and the setback from River Street is going to be slightly increased, and I'll explain that in a moment. The architect, Ms. Franco, will discuss the details and the layout of the home in her testimony. But what I'd like to highlight is one of the biggest changes is the addition of 2 off-street parking spaces. So the one main difference here is we're going to propose a new curb cut and replacing the retaining walls. We're going to have a driveway with 1 space off River Street for 1 single vehicle, and then the ground level of this home, which is really the street level, will act as, we'll have a garage that's facing the street, and that's one of the variances we'll be seeking. And that garage can support 1 vehicle.
I'm sorry, I couldn't get this from the plans. Is the garage underground a little?
Yeah.
Kind of into that little bit of a hillside almost?
So there's not quite a hill there. It's basically, you got the sidewalk and then you have retaining walls up to flat. So this is a creative design selection by the applicants and Ms. Franco. We're going to use that elevation difference and bring the retaining walls into a garage. So yes, in effect, the garage is the basement. But from the front, you can see the garage doors. From everywhere else, you're not going to see it. It's going to look like a 2-story house on all sides. So 2 off-street parking spaces here meets the borough ordinance's requirement and also the RSIS requirement for a home that's up to 3 bedrooms. So we feel it complies. The first floor will be accessed via a flight of stairs up from the driveway, and that's shown on our plan on the east side of the driveway. New retaining walls are proposed out front as well. The material of these walls will likely be a reinforced masonry with some sort of veneer to match the veneer on the home that's proposed. The ground floor or basement egress is provided via an access well on the west side of the home, and we're proposing 2 AC condensers on that west side as well, as shown as our plot plan. They meet the 3-foot requirement, and they will be, I believe they have to be screened with vegetation. We're proposing to do that. There will be a rear patio and in-ground pool, as you can see, both of which will meet their required respective setbacks. Pool equipment is all the way at the rear of the property, so the 10-foot easement, the sanitary easement is right at the rear. And we're proposing the pool equipment, which needs a 10-foot setback on side and rear, right along that easement. So it's as far back and it's at the center of the property in the back. So, and as far away from everybody as it can be at a minimum. Pool fence is proposed around the perimeter of property. Again, likely a 4-foot black aluminum fence, which you see commonly for new pools. Our plan is currently showing this fence around the entire perimeter of the property and extending up to the retaining walls at the front. And the reason we're doing that is to provide the fall protection that's required for retaining walls of that height. The retaining walls, I think, are about 6-7 feet tall, and that you need adequate fall protection with a fence. in any event, the fencing is intended to comply with the borough ordinance. In terms of grading and drainage, the site generally pitches from back to front. Obviously, there's a huge drop off at the front. But we're seeking to continue the grading arrangement on site. We'll be collecting yard runoff and roof runoff into a piping system, which will discharge in the front of the property through the bottom of the walls. We acknowledge that the borough engineer has to review our grading and drainage plan, but we, as part of our plot plan, included grading and drainage details. For landscaping, we anticipate typical new construction landscaping, likely foundation plantings along the front of the house and some supplemental plantings in the rear yard with the pool. There are two existing trees in the center of the yard that will be removed, but there are trees, as you can see on the survey, along the neighboring properties that must stay because they're not on our property. Due to the limited width of the property and the required retaining walls to make up the elevation differences that exist today, there is no room for new trees in the front yard along the street. Therefore, in lieu of planting a tree, the applicant requests that they post a payment in lieu to the borough for a shade tree. And then, like I said, with utilities, we're seeking to keep the existing utility connections as feasible. If any upgrades are needed, the applicant will proceed with those upgrades. But again, everything goes out to River Street except for the sanitary, which goes off to the rear, into the eastman. And that's it for engineering.
Sanitary, Terry Sorgo.
It goes off to the rear. There's a sanitary easement right here. So on the survey, you can actually, there's a clean out identified on the survey. That'll have to be moved for the pool. But yeah, the sewer goes into the rear.
Back to the condos.
Yeah, that easement goes east to west. I think everything flows east. That's it for direct engineering.
Okay, questions from the board? Eugene, go ahead.
Yeah, just the proposed swimming pool, it looks like it says coping elevation 37.15. What is that?
That's so when we do grading plans, we have, it's basically, depending on the type of pool, so if it's a vinyl pool, there's that metal coping in the middle, that sets that elevation flat. And then the patio runs off from it. So that's the pool coping. If it's a concrete pool, there'll be a tile or something like that. That's just an indicator of the elevation.
37.15 inches or?
No, that's the elevation relative to everything in the property. So that's basically, the pool will be flat.
Okay.
Flush.
Got it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
timber.
Anybody else with a question? I didn't quite hear, oops,
Sorry, I didn't quite hear what you said about, you said that you'd be collecting, this has to do grading the drainage, collecting, the runoff would be piped somewhere? I didn't get what
So
would happen to it then?
we have an opportunity because of we're gonna put the house in the center of this narrow lot to collect surface runoff from like the pool patio, right? So we don't impact the neighbors. Collect it there and collect the roof runoff in the same piping system. Because the yard is about 10 feet above the sidewalk, we have the ability to put those pipes underground. And then through the face of wall, we'll have small outlet pipes that just will discharge. Right now, everything just cascades over the wall, which is.
so they just
Discharge onto the sidewalk or?
Yes, and that's how it is today. I mean,
All
there's
right.
nowhere else to go. It's better for, and I'll say this from an engineering standpoint, it's better for the long-term health of the retaining walls.
Right.
To get the water out from behind the walls. Right now, it doesn't, right now it seeps into the ground or cascades over the walls. So that's why you see, I think the applicant here has recently, somewhat recently had to replace a section of wall because of structural issues.
Other questions from the board? I don't want to cut anybody off. Are there questions from the public? I don't know that we have any public left, but,
all right, additional
testimony?
So we have our architect here, if the board would like to hear beyond what you submitted, and you then have a little plan to take the money and want to conclude with.
Okay.
We'll just, I think the plans are pretty clear, but we'll run through it real quickly. Thank you.
Good evening, Catherine Franco. Good to see you. If you could just state your name and business address, please. All right, and just one annoying thing, you're gonna have to learn that. You have to speak right into that microphone. Do you swear that the information and testimony you're about to provide will be the truth, the best of your knowledge, to help you God?
Yes, I do.
And tonight you are testifying in your capacity as a licensed architect?
Yes.
Thank you.
And real quick credentials, just
To make the record.
I've been a sole proprietor for 30 years now. I've been in front of many boards in Monmouth County. I graduated from Grad Institute.
Oh, okay, I don't need you anymore, I did too.
Thank you, we'll accept it.
Franco, you prepared the architectural plans for the application?
Yes, I did.
Can you briefly describe to the board what you prepared?
Yes, when I first met with the client, this is like the dream home now that they're empty nesters. So one thing they did want was off-street parking, because we all know it's a parking issue everywhere. So what we did is we cut into the hill to create the garage. And then it's almost like a brownstone in New York, you know, where it's kind of enclosed down below. So we have the garage, and then we have storage space underneath behind the garage that can never be used as a bedroom or anything like that, because the windows are not egress or anything like that. The second floor is the main living space where we have the kitchen, dining room, and living room with a powder room and a pantry. Got those drawings? Oh, you don't have to? Does everyone else have their set?
Yes.
I'll have it in our.
I'm old school.
I was very small. I don't want to, give it to the other.
The best place to see the garage is the last page, C4. And you can see where it says elevation 27 Parliament Road. That's the road, and then you pull in, and then the basement is truly the garage. So this is where you can see it.
Yeah, I have it.
Back to the first floor, like I said, we have a main living space, and we're trying to make an open stairway for a visual effect. And of course, the patio and the pool behind it. Like I said, it's the final. And then the second floor, well, we only went with the 2-bedroom, 2 really nice sized bedrooms, a master suite, 2 bathrooms, closets. And then we have the attic living space, which is a third of the area below, which is allowed, mostly to get away from each other, you know, like a secondary office or a reading room, library.
I'm moving the children out.
Yeah, but not the spouts.
Maybe the daughter. No. And you know, if on Z3, you'll see the 3 front elevation. And this is where you see the retaining wall, the garage door, you go up the steps to the main entry. And then we have that stair tower open, modern. And then we have a balcony off the main space, a bedroom, and then we do have the roof deck in front, because there is a tall view.
And it's just describe the view, you're near the river, right? So
Yeah.
there is a beautiful view there.
The sun's out in the river.
You're trying to take advantage of that.
Exactly.
So this is a pretty modern design.
Oh, yes.
Okay, that's it.
It's one of the few I've done.
Questions for? Members? Questions? For the architect? No? Question from the public? See me? Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry. Yelling at me. Questions from the board, anyone? No, I don't see any questions from the public. I don't see any. You also have your planners coming. Oh, okay.
Board as well to stay a little extra, we have to take 5 minutes just to.
Okay. Great.
All right, Pat.
Okay, I'm sorry,
Can you just clarify something? I think you testified
there will be 2 parking spaces.
spaces, one in the driveway and one in the garage.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Is there space on the street for one more car?
Yeah, the driveway takes up, I think, the curb cut's 13 feet wide, so yes, at 35 foot.
Now, so what do you have a spot for?
Get to on the east side, we have almost a full spot. Right on the top side of the page.
Almost a full spot.
Okay.
But
Somebody needs a
Thanks,
mini
Cindy.
Cooper.
Okay,
Sorry to interrupt you.
That's okay. Okay, so I'll run through just a list of the existing nonconformities and the variances. So existing nonconformities that are unchanged are the lot area, which we are 3 square feet deficient from the 4,500 square feet. Now, minimum lot frontage, 50 feet is required, 35 feet exists. So now we have existing nonconformities that we're improving, but we're trying to justify those as new variances. So the minimum front yard setback, 30 feet is required, 13.2 feet exists. We're improving that to 13.59 feet. Sounds like a little bit, but that's measured.
I'm sorry, what was required?
30.
30, thank you.
And that measurement of 13.59 is to the new covered entry. The actual house facade is at 18.9 feet. So the house facade is a good 5 feet back from where it is today. Minimum side yard setback of one side, 10 feet is required, 5.8 feet exists. We're improving that to 6 feet. Minimum side yard setback both sides, 20 feet required, 12.6 feet exists, and we're improving that to 14 feet. So you can see that's where the little slightly narrower house comes into play. We have a new variance for garage orientation. The garage, as you can see, faces the front or the street, which is not permitted for attached garages in the borough. We find that the side yard setback and garage orientation variances can be analyzed as C1 hardship variances, all relating to the narrowness of the lot, which limits the extent to which it can be developed. And we find no reasonable opportunity to cure the narrowness. As I mentioned, the lot is only 35 feet wide, and the zoning, including the setbacks, contemplates lots that are 50 feet wide. So if you were to apply the minimum required side setbacks to this lot, compliant home would be only 15 feet wide. We're seeking to improve the current side yards by proposing a narrower home here. And the same argument can be made for the garage orientation. There is no room on site to allow for a side entry garage. It's too narrow. Here we find that proposing 2 off-street parking spaces is a big positive this project provides, where no parking off-street exists today. The lot is too narrow to allow for a reasonably sized home, a minimum 10-foot driveway width on one side, and to meet the 3-foot driveway setback. So a layout like this would potentially create a worse side yard setback on the opposite side of the driveway. Therefore, we feel that the request for a front-facing garage is appropriate for this particular property. The front yard setback can be analyzed as a flexible C2 variance. First off, we're improving the front yard setback. Front facade of the home is over 5 feet further back than the house that exists today. Here, since the house needs to be narrower due to the lot narrowness, the depth of the house increases. In order to provide a reasonable rear yard area between the house and the sewer easement, the home is forced forward, similar to other homes on the block. And as you can see on our aerial exhibit, our front yard setback maintains consistency with the streetscape on our side of the river. We feel the application furthers the following purposes of planning in the MLU. A, this is an appropriate use of development as we're proposing a single family home in a zoning district that remains the same. B, this application secures safety from fire, flood, panic, and other natural man-made disasters. We have a new dwelling and wall construction, all built to the latest codes, which is a safer arrangement. C, this application improves light, air, and open space. We're improving our front yard and side yard setbacks here, and the accessory structures proposed meet their required setbacks. The driveway in the front reduces the bulk of the retaining walls along the front of the property, opening up the property visually along its front. I, this application promotes a desirable visual environment. All new site improvements and the new attractive dwelling enhances the aesthetics of the site. And we feel this application conserves property values in the neighborhood with the new construction. As for the negative criteria, when we analyze that, we look at potential impacts of the project on adjacent properties and the public. Here, we see no impact to the public or the public view shed. The home is to be located in a similar location as the existing home, which will be in line with the neighborhood and the neighboring homes as shown on the aerial. Further,
I'm sorry, what was that? Say it last part again.
no problem. The home was to be located in a similar location as the existing home, which will be in line with the neighboring homes as shown on the aerial. Further, we feel that the additional off-street parking proposed is the opposite of an impact to the public. We find it to be a benefit. For neighboring properties, we see no added impact. We acknowledge that the lot is narrow, and acknowledging this, the applicant has designed a narrower home on the property and improved the setbacks. We feel there are no drainage impacts as the entire site is directed to River Street and away from neighboring properties. And as we said at the beginning, the building height and accessory setbacks comply with the ordinance requirements for the zone. So therefore, the proposed development would not cause substantial detriment to the public good nor substantially impair the intent and purpose of the zone plan. And on balance, it's my opinion that the benefits of this application substantially outweigh its detriments if any, giving the board the ability to approve this application with confidence.
You,
Questions for Mr. Ward in his role as planner?
I have a question about the design of the home. Is the modern design of the home in line with the neighborhood? Are there other modern homes on that street?
Basic style on that road. There's a little bit of everything, but this will be the most modern.
And how does that,
Align with our master plan?
Yes.
Yeah.
planner,
How does erecting a three-story modern family house align
with the master plan?
Yeah, so there's nothing in the master plan that really points to maintaining consistent architecture in the neighborhood, and as Catherine said, I agree with her. And actually in Ms. Ebanks, because houses in the neighborhood, and you can see there's different ridge lines, different styles of construction. Across the street, there appears to be a mansard roof, which is a flat roof. We're proposing a flat roof, so it's kind of a, for lack of a better term, a mishmash in our neighborhood. And this type of architecture is kind of a newer trend that we're seeing for infill development in Red Bank, whether it's closer to the really, busier downtown area or off of the downtown area, meeting side street like this. So master plan doesn't point to anything in particular about this, good or bad.
okay, thank you, Slade.
Yeah, I'm gonna push the button the right time now. Okay, I see you've kind of gotten the farmhouse style with an A-line on the side, right? The roof line?
On the back side.
On the back side. I think I see what you're doing, I love it, but I think that to be in line with the neighborhood, you probably need to bring that to the front. That saying, look, I see what you're doing, I see it coming up on Shrewsbury Avenue, I see it in a couple of other things. Like I said again, I think the A-line would be more appropriate if it's carried through. That's what all the neighborhood houses look like. One thing they have is that same pitch.
I think the order, already answered that question.
I think it's beautiful. I just don't know if it's in place for there. I know the street.
Sure, well, we'll just swear you in. Just state your name for the record, please.
Shea, 248 Avenue.
All right, good evening, Mr. Shea, and welcome. Do you swear that the information and testimony you're about to provide will be the truth, the best of your knowledge, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you.
So the reason we put the balcony,
Just speak into the mic.
the reason we put the balcony in the front is because the view of the swimming river, it comes around. I don't know if you've ever been on that street, but it's got an absolutely beautiful view of the swimming river and the sunset. If you put that on the backside, you're not.
Can't duplicate it.
Meaning,
You can't bring something to give it more texture that looks like a street.
and still have the balcony, then you can look over. I don't believe so. And yeah, I mean, when, I bought this house 27 years ago, when I did, this is what I had. Not that it can't be changed, but it's been a dream. So if you could stand on my roof during the sunset, you'd understand why.
Well, I don't understand. So you're saying you wouldn't have a view of the swimming river unless you designed it the way that you designed it?
So if the patio is in the back of the house, you won't see, because you have the street and there's no obstructions from the back. The back of the house, there's obstruction. You can't see the river. You can't see
Right, from the back, but I'm saying there's no way, there's a design, I imagine, to resemble other homes on the street that would give you the view of the river, isn't there?
Yeah. I just clarify, you're trying to disguise it.
I'm saying I can't see why it can't look like the front. I see your square footage. I see it's easier to go with a square building and you get that square patio. And I love it myself. I don't dislike it. I just don't think it has anything to do with what's happening around you. And, you know, as you come into the neighborhood, it will be the first of that type. Might be a pro, might be a con, I don't know. I'm just saying that if I wanted to blend into the neighborhood, I would do an A-frame of some sort. I don't mind the patio, I don't mind the balcony, I love them both. And I even like the square look. I just think that when you're gonna come down that street and you're gonna see this monolithic structure going up on the top of the hill, and it's going to be a lot right there.
What's gonna happen is,
Microphone, I'm sorry, Ms. Franco.
eventually, the houses along, they're all so small. And with what's happening in Red Bank, they're all changing. Okay, right now, the one next door, I think the one on each side, they're both one-story bungalow type homes. And eventually, I can see that those are gonna be gone. You know, the value of Red Bank has come up so much that people are going to make two-story homes. And whether it's modern or more of a contemporary style, I think that's going to be okay. But right now, there is no consistency on that street.
Right, and
so why, what are we trying to do?
I hear what you're saying.
You know, it's like, why are we trying to duplicate something that may not be adjacent to us in 3 to 10 years?
There's three houses directly, if I'm staring at the proposed property, the three houses directly to its left are all two-story homes. One of them has a deck. Has two decks, has a deck on the top and a deck on the bottom. Right, so you're saying, I'm not quite getting, you think those houses are tear down houses?
I think they'll eventually. I see it all the time. One person starts and then it dominoes on the street. But beside that, this is their dream home. Okay, and as you can see in Red Bank, you can go down several streets in Red Bank. From Catherine Street, in that area, all of a sudden you see this beautiful modern house. And it's okay, it does fit, it is different. But it's a statement of the people who live there. And that's the purpose of architecture. You know, it's who lives there. It's their home, it's what represents them. So I do feel passionate about that. And they came to me, like I said, I don't do very modern at all. But I was very passionate. And I don't know what else to tell you. I don't think it's gonna feel that out of place.
In terms of size, it's gonna be comparable.
To its neighbors.
Oh, yes, yeah, because you do have two-story.
Yeah.
And you do have something, have the driveways going up the hill as you go more toward the center.
I think the driveway and garage is very creative, really.
I think that's a lot.
Further down.
I think getting driveway.
Further down the hill, there's a driveway that goes in and that's a 60. Because that was the best option with a deck on top of the driveway.
Yeah, I look at all those houses, they're all interesting. It's like I did a whole series of houses in Newark, the same thing happened. We ended up going down into the basements. And one did it, the next one's did. Parking's an issue.
Yeah. Other comments or questions from you? So we close the public portion?
Is there anything we're missing here?
No, any,
I can just represent also that there were some comments in this next,
Oh, right, yeah, let's,
most were testimony, but we provided with 2, 3, all ones that require compliance, 2, 3, 9, 11, and 13, we agreed to $500. So I can state that.
and one of the variances in
This Ebanks is gone because there are 2 spaces offsite, is that correct?
They were, no, they didn't need parking variance, but this is the orientation.
okay, but somewhere I thought it said they needed a parking variance because they were only proposing one earlier.
Yeah, no.
All right, would someone like to move to deny this?
And I had written down a couple of boards inclined, want me to quickly read any potential
Yes,
conditions
please.
if the board's inclined to
Yes.
approve, obviously compliance with all the promises, commitments and representations the applicant's team made tonight. Obviously getting any necessary demolition permits, compliance with all our affordable housing rules, regulations, contributions, as are applicable, obtaining any necessary outside approvals with the caveat that if the application materially changes as a result of any such outside approvals, you need to come back. I think, Chair, you were, concerned that we make sure that the grading and drainage details are reviewed and approved by the board engineer, compliance with, Shauna Ebanks review memorandum, compliance with obtaining all necessary permits. The air conditioning is going to be screened and, placed in a zoning compliant location. Full fence, in accordance with prevailing requirements, compliance with prevailing construction code and building code requirements. Mr. Flager, we typically have a requirement that you perpetually maintain and replace and replant the landscaping as necessary. And I wrote here, was there something about foundation plantings and supplemental plants? Is that any type of condition? Okay. And let's see, Shauna, do we have anything with new construction about utilities have to be underground, or is there any requirement for that or no? Okay, so you comply with whatever the rules. We want to make sure that the runoff is going to be, as Patrick indicated, it's going to be contained on site, correct? And let's see. I'm sorry. And back to that. And then the shade tree, that was the shade tree commission in lieu of the planting. And then we're just confirmed for the record that there's 2 parking spaces. Oh, okay, got it. All right, so those were the general conditions. If that helps with the board.
I would like to move to approve this application.
Second? Ben, second.
And then just so I know, is there any, is there any condition about that balcony discussion that, are we as is, or are you looking to it to be changed? Just so that we're clear.
I
Would approve it as is, with the, I mean, the long list of conditions, sure, of course.
Is that acceptable?
Second.
Yes.
And Tori?
Yes.
Eileen Hogan,
Yes.
Ben Euro,
Yeah.
Sharon Lee,
Yes.
Vincent Light,
Yes.
Paul Cagnon.
I'm going to abstain.
Okay. So then I go to the next one. And Anna Cruz.
Yes.
Okay, I think you are improved,
Thank you.
and we wish you the best of luck with your greenhouse.
Look forward to the.
And we'll have
Cocktails on the,
that's right.
sorry, we do need a motion.
You're doing all in favor?
Yes.
Any opposed?
Vincent is moving, I'll second.
Okay, all in favor. Aye.
Anyone?